How's it going, everybody? Hope you guys are all staying safe in these very uncertain times through this quarantine, wherever you may be in the world. Today's video is going to be on something that I've been thinking a lot about over the last couple of years, and this is something that has sparked a lot of debate and conversation between my friends and I when we be at the skate park, go on trips, look at magazines, see things on Instagram, what have you. Pretty much anything where we'd see the trick name and we'd be able to actually see the trick itself is why, of all the stances, are the fakie tricks always messed up in the name by comparison to the other ones? Because the consistency for the direction, for the flip, for everything is the same, regular, switch, and nollie, but when it comes to fakie, it's backwards. And I have never understood why. People have told me before where it's because it is the same stance as when you do it regular, but you're just going backwards. I understand that, but the thing is, when you change the stance, you have to change the trick direction as well. And it is proven evident when skating nollie and switch. And we'll go over that in the video as well. So I want to give you guys a couple examples to see what I mean when it comes to trick names being messed up, directions being messed up, and just why is it that fakie seems to be the only one where it's not named appropriately, again, by comparison to the other stances. So without any other further ado, let's dive in.
Just a small disclaimer before I get through to the video is why tricks are labeled either frontside or backside. When it comes to either the direction of travel or the obstacle in which you're going to be skating on, if the front of you is facing either of those, that is what's called frontside. Same thing for backside. If your back is facing either the direction of travel or the obstacle in question that you're going to be doing your trick on, that is what labels it backside. And a lot of the examples for that will be in this video. Also, another point of reference in case you guys are confused on that, when it comes to doing a full 360 when doing 180s, you have to do one after another, a frontside variation of a 180 followed by a backside variation of a 180. Seen here by JB, he's doing a backside 180 followed by a switch frontside 180. And that's what turns him around a full 360 to make it complete. You cannot do, for example, a frontside 180 followed by a switch frontside 180 because then you have not done a full 360 rotation. And that's what makes it a 360 if you do a frontside variation of 180 followed by a backside variation of 180. It would not matter if it was a frontside 180 followed by a fakie backside 180. It would still be a full 360 rotation regardless of if you popped off the nose, the tail, whatever. It's still frontside and backside. That's why when it comes to fakie, the consistency for it to be a fakie backside 180, if your back is facing the obstacle or the direction, needs to be in play. But let's get on to the video. Fakie backside lip slide versus a fakie frontside board slide. While doing a lip slide of any kind, the rule of thumb is the back truck for the direction you are traveling, not the stance you're in, needs to go over the rail in order for it to be a lip slide, either frontside or backside. But in this case, it is labeled a backside lip slide, when if it was nollie, it would be a board slide.
My name is Travis Erickson, and today I'm going to try to teach you how to do nollie front boards.
Both skaters being regular, and even flipping Zion's clip to look nollie now, there is no difference in motion between the trick to make one board slide versus one a lip slide, thus making what Zion is doing supposed to be a fakie frontside board slide. Fakie nose grind versus fakie 5-0. Looking at nose grinds being done, the trick is done on the front truck of the board, not the nose truck necessarily, because when skating switch, if you ride your board true to the nose being in front of your front foot and tail being behind your back foot, and I'm only bringing this up because I want to take away the debate of those who turn their board around when skating switch because they have to skate the nose as the nose when skating switch, and also for those who ride their boards backwards, like Kelly Hart did for years, and Ryan DeCenzo still does to this day, to name a few skaters. No matter what stance, for example, regular, when riding regular and nollie, your truck under your left foot is the front. And switch and fakie, your front truck becomes under your right foot. Pretty simple. But watching these nose grinds, the goofy-footed nose grind by Brandon Biebel is right. The switch one by me is right, because I'm regular. The Nollie one by Sean Malto is right, and the Fakie one by Marty turns into a 5-0 for some reason. And if you do an actual 5-0 locked in grind starting in Fakie, like Brandon Biebel does here, it is called a nose grind. When if you flip the clip to look Nollie and told someone it was a 5-0, nobody would question it. Fakie noseslide versus Fakie tailslide. When doing a regular, Nollie, and switch noseslide, the trick is done on the front of the board for the direction in which you're traveling, not necessarily on having to be on the actual nose or tail of the board. When doing this trick in your natural stance, in the clip by both Felipe and Lucas, they're both goofy. They pop on the nose and it slides on the nose in front of their right foot. But when it's done Fakie, it's now popped on the opposite side that they're sliding on. I don't understand why, if again you flip this to where it looks Nollie for them, they would be doing a Nollie tail slide, but when going Fakie, it becomes a Nollie nose slide. Fakie frontside flip versus Nollie backside flip. We all hopefully know what a frontside flip looks like. Doing a kickflip 180 with the front of you going in the direction of travel, regardless of stance. When doing the motion of a frontside flip in Nollie, because you have switched the stance within going the same direction as regular, you are now turning your back toward the direction of travel, aka why it's called backside. When doing the trick switch, obviously the front of you is facing the direction of travel. Same motions with the same feet placements. The only thing that changes is the direction. That's why in switch, your front is facing forward, and in Nollie, your back is facing forward. But when you do it Fakie, you are now doing a frontside flip while your back faces the direction of travel. Looking at the clips side by side, both Chris and TJ being regular footed, they look to be the same motion. One's just Nollie and one's just Fakie. Both off the front of the board for the direction that they are going respectively. And when you flip around the Fakie one, it's literally the same trick if you look at them with no context of stance. But Fakie is called frontside. Nollie blunt slides versus Fakie nose blunt slides. For nose blunts, it's the same rule of thumb as a lip slide, and even blunt slides. Besides both trucks going over the obstacle, the front of your board is locked in and slid on to make it a nose blunt. The tail or back of the board is on the opposite side of which the sliding is happening. When you see Jeremy Liabres here, who is goofy-footed, doing this trick, it's called a Nollie blunt slide, because if you look at this still shot with no context of stance, it's a front blunt down a rail. When doing a Nollie nose blunt, it's the same as a regular. The trick is popped with the nose though, but the board goes over and the nose, or front of the board, is locked in and slid against to make it a Nollie nose blunt. Looking at this still, knowing he is goofy and not knowing what stance he did this in, you would be right to guess a switch front blunt. But because he popped it Fakie, it now becomes a nose blunt. Despite seeing them side by side, and even flipping the Fakie one to look Nollie as well, it's literally the exact same motion, even to be thought of as the same trick. But simply because it's Fakie, it's now considered a nose blunt, while the Nollie one is just a blunt. One thing I found consistent with my reasoning for not just calling Fakie tricks the same as regular ones with the same flip motion, but now just labeled Fakie, are crooks versus suskis. When in Fakie, it's called a crook still, which is the correct name for it, but looking at the motion of grinding compared to a susky grind, if you take a still of both, you cannot tell the difference. It's a backside 5-0 that's tweaked to the side between a straight 5-0 and tail slide, which going Fakie would be crook. But in Fakie, it's still called a crook, again with that being correct. And for those arguing that if you pop Fakie and then literally land in a susky locked grind, you're wrong, because we already covered that popping Fakie and landing on the back truck for direction of travel is called a nose grind. So just tweaking that lock-in doesn't then turn a nose grind trick into a 5-0 trick. Nollie 270 front boards versus Nollie 270 lip slides. This is mainly the barracks and street league that I see doing this. As I've already mentioned before, trick names are done from the stance started out in, not what you end up in throughout the trick towards the end of the trick. When you look at these two stills, knowing Matt Miller is goofy, if you saw him going from here to here and never knew that he spun 270 into it, it would be called a Nollie backside lip slide. But because he adds a frontside 270, it's now called a front board. The spin direction is irrelevant, and even considering the rule of thumb for lip slides, his back truck still ends up on the opposite side of the rail when sliding from which he popped, so it's still a lip slide. Front 270 nose blunts versus switch 270 blunts. Greg Lutzka, who is goofy, is doing a frontside 270 nose blunt. If you take the stills of his stance when he pops to when he is sliding, and you didn't know he spun into it, you'd be right to say that it was a backside nose blunt. Now take Alec Majerez, who is goofy, and the same thing, stills from the stance he popped in, and from when he actually slides and locks in. Without knowing he spun into it, you would be rightfully saying that he did a switch backside nose blunt. But because he spun into it, it's now labeled a switch 270 front blunt, when it would have been a front blunt if he started from popping from just goofy. Any grind or slide labeled with a stance flip out. This is a pet peeve of mine because when you add a stance flip out of a grind or a slide, it's pretty much a double negative at that point because, for example, with this crook nollie flip out by Cody McIntyre, you're already on the nose of the board. And saying you nollie flipped out is the same thing as saying you did plus positive 5 tricks for warm-up. It's completely pointless and redundant. It's almost like the person having to say that it was a nollie flip out thinks that unless they say the stance, the person hearing the trick or watching it happen will think that you did a regular or goofy stance kickflip out, depending on what stance you started in, from popping off the nose, making it a front foot flip out, which is a lot harder for most people to do than just doing a kickflip out of a crook. When you slide, tail slides, or do 5-0s, for example, you don't have to mention that it's a regular or goofy kickflip out. So for crooks, nose slides, nose grinds, whatever you're doing off the nose, because you're already on the nose, it's not necessarily to add that it was a nollie flip out. Just say that it's a kickflip out. This point I wanted to add because of a sequence I saw in a magazine from Carlos Ribeiro doing a trick on a ledge that was labeled Nollie 180, Fakie nose grind, switch heel flip out. You started in one stance. The trick name derives from the stance from which you started the trick in, not what you ended up in throughout the trick until it was landed. So there is no point in literally labeling every single stance that you did throughout the entire trick if you were to break them up individually piece by piece. So that's going to be it for this video. I just wanted to make this because it's something that I've had a lot of conversations with friends about over the years, something that's been on my mind as of lately for something to talk about, and hopefully will spark some good conversation in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and like to see more, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification to be notified whenever a new video goes up. If you liked this video, please give it a like and a share so that way we can help to grow the channel to be able to do more videos for you guys. And please do leave your thoughts down below. Do you feel that I'm right? Do you think that my trick labeling is wrong? Let me know down below. I'd really be curious to see what you guys say. Other than that, I hope you guys again are doing well through all of this uncertain times, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.